Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United. Joining me this evening in no particular order is Patricia Steer. How are you doing, Patricia?
I'm double plus good, Nathan. Thank you for having me on.
Good to have you here. We've also got Stephen Chess. How are you doing, Stephen? Or maybe we haven't got Stephen. No audio from Stephen. Can we hear you, Stephen? Can you say something to us? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We'll come back to Stephen maybe shortly. And we've got Martin Liedtke. How are you doing, Flat Earth British?
I am epic, except I've been picked on by YouTube and copyrighted. Apart from that, rose above, and I am feeling epic.
That's good to hear. And last but not least, we've got Mark Sargent. How are you doing, Mark?
I hardly endorse this product and or event.
Well, the event is a book called 1984, so you'll start with you then, Mark, based on that comment. So you fully endorse 1984 and all of its values and messages, do you?
Yes, more control equals a safer society. No, really? You want to start with me? Or
well, actually, an armed society, many people feel, is a safer society.
But that's not really what...
I know that's not what it's about.
1984 is really, for me, it was really about revisionist history, like a lot of people. And I've seen it. I've seen it here. So no, it's not a good thing. But people, we try to do it. In fact, once a group or an institution gets large enough, they will try to soften the edges. Look at the American education. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I'll speak from at least our side a little bit, which is look at our American education system, which just last year was considering removing slavery and the atomic bombs that were done on Hiroshima and Nagasaki from the history books, thinking of just kind of pushing those off the side because it painted America in a bad light. And, you know, you do that. And of course, it didn't happen. At least I don't think it did. But you do that. And then one generation later, there are kids that have, I mean, our kids are terrible at it anyway, but kids wouldn't even know that such a thing happened. So, I mean, that's just one example of how it's happening here. George Orwell wasn't just a visionary. I firmly believe he had some sort of glimpse, either via trance or someone let him know, a glimpse into the future. I've never seen a book get more relevant, not only once it got to 1984, and I read it in 1984.
I graduated high school in 81. That things could go from where they were then. Sorry, I hear a bit of an echo all of a sudden.
Yeah,
okay?
For some reason we had a bit of a technical issue, so we stopped for a minute, but we're all back now, it seems.
Okay, echo. Okay, now the echo's gone. That I didn't think that things could have changed so drastically from when I was reading the book in, I'm just going to guess, 79, 80 to 1984, because that just seemed in this book so futuristic that so many things would have to change to get to that level. And they didn't change by 1984, but they started in 1984 for sure. But we didn't notice it. We didn't notice the little changes. Definitely those of us who are involved with truth seeking and flat earth in general have opened our eyes to all of these changes. I mean, many of us are using a telescreen right now to watch this very video. There is no more privacy anymore. And most of us, even those who are still in the matrix, we're pretty aware of that. We sign into something to buy something online, and then popping up next to that are all these suggestions for other things that we could purchase that are very similar at different price points. So Big Brother is watching us, but we're allowing it. It's different than in the book. No one's rebelling. Maybe we, the flat earthers and truth seekers, are, but everyone else is willingly just saying, sure, watch me more. follow everything I do more, pin my geographical location so everybody can see it. So we're signing up to be residents of Oceania.
Yeah, certainly here in Britain. We were talking about this before the show. Martin and I and Stephen were talking about the differences in terms of apathy with the public's relation to Big Brother, if you want to call it that. And we were talking about the lampposts that listen to you here in Britain and the cameras, certainly in Leamington. I don't know if anybody who went to the meet noticed this, but the whole town is covered by CCTV and little listening posts so they can literally listen to you. Yeah.
Were we by any listening posts when we met near the largest structure there in the park in Leamington Spa, the obelisk? Were there any right near the Flat Earth group? Do you remember, Martin?
I think the obelisk itself is actually a...
Oh, sorry, Nathan.
I was just going to say, it was a joke. I was going to say that the obelisk itself is a giant microphone.
Yeah, well,
you ruined my joke.
Is Alistair Crowley is from Leamington Spa. He was born there. And in his writings, he talks about when he's a boy in Leamington Spa and he goes to a local park, he actually talks about climbing a tree. Do you think? Now, that obelisk was built in 1875, so 100% for sure, that obelisk would have had some influence in his life. He would have looked at that obelisk, he would have sat in that tree, and he would have thought about what it meant. So that was quite symbolic, that that exact obelisk, especially with Alistair Crowley connection. I thought that was something weird.
Maybe Eternal Padawan who was up in the tree. Maybe that was the very same tree Alistair Crowley could have been in.
I thought it when I seen it. So it was a couple of 100-year-old to see. It was a very old tree, and they're quite rare.
So, I mean, the question I asked in the advert about 90.
He worked for Eastern Propaganda in Counterintelligence for the BBC. That was his job, for counterintelligence. Now, going before World War II, he went to Spain to join the Spanish Civil War. And around 1936, he joined the Republican side against basically Franco and the fascists. And he acted as a wing of the Communist Party for propaganda. So instantly, he's got a big job as a propaganda promoter. Then with the BBC, Eastern Propaganda. His wife, she works for the Ministry of Propaganda in Britain. And not only that, they set up in 2002, listen to this shit actually exists now. The Ministry of, where is it? Set up in 2002. I couldn't believe it when I read it and found a connection. But I'm not sure if he's actually a Freemason, but I can guarantee you he's a member of the Fabian Society. And the Fabian Society is Marxist by nature, communist by nature. Our Labour leader in the UK now, Corbyn, he is a Marxist. He's trying to instill, using Brexit, a Marxist regime in Britain right now. He's a member of the Fabians. You can see him on a stage with the Fabians right behind him. You'd have to research the Fabians. Anybody want a book on it? I got him. But he's one at Orwell. He has got links to Freemasonry. He's also got links to the occult and the Rosicrucians as well, believe it or not. And he also had correspondence with Alistair Crowley. Who also was working in the intelligence services in World War II. So they would have had connection there as well. So it's a really interesting tale. But I think he's not doing basically snipping it out to the public. I believe that he's a tool, propaganda tool, to basically in plain sight. It's not all the truths are not there, but it's basically the framework, isn't it, for what's happening now. He writes that book in 1949. He's dead a year later. You know, it's a really intriguing story. But yeah, he's a Marxist, and you know who started the Russian Revolution. I don't have to go into it with Lenin, so you know who's pulling his strings. So yeah, he's definitely a setter. From what I can make out, and a Fabian. That kills it for me. So that's my theory.
What about it just being history repeating, though? What about it just being him taking influence of wars gone by that are never ending or seemingly never ending, and then putting that into his novel? And people then saying, well, no, he must have known about the never ending wars that were to come, when it's just cyclical.
Well, that's Karl Marx, though, Nathan. In Karl Marx's doctrines, he talks about a perpetual war, with the perpetual war between Eurasia and Oceania. So it's exactly the same. And Adolf Hitler also in Second World War, the fascists, they wanted a perpetual war on the East, always to be fed on
monitored by MI5.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people don't really know about. And he ratted out a couple of people, including Charlie Chaplin and a couple other famous people, for being communists. And later, notes were found. Sorry, there's a big echo. I don't want to continue annoying people by
Yeah,
speaking.
it's my fault every time, because at my end, the broadcast is stopping because this hangout for some reason is stopping. What I might do, although it will mean we'll have a simulcast going, is actually start this hangout. So although it'll be like another introduction with me saying, good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United and all that sort of stuff again, at least it means that this...
Because
yes, we've been on the air the whole time, but I think because I've started this hangout now, it may be less likely to just keep dropping and snapping because it's being broadcast via OBS, which is a pain. I thought it would just work. It seems to work for everyone else, but for me, because I'm just literally broadcasting what's on my second screen, when that drops, you guys are continuing to talk in the call, which is great. But now we've got literally 2 broadcasts running. Hopefully they'll both just continue to work now. But
one of them sticks. Okay, so what I was saying is that George Orwell was monitored by MI5 for approximately 20 years. And during that period of time, he actually ratted out some famous people, including Charlie Chaplin, saying that he was a communist. And then much later, notes were found, or he turned over some notes, George Orwell, that he thought some other people were communists, including Katharine Hepburn, the actress, John Steinbeck, and Orson Welles. So we think of George Orwell as being this man who was so elevated or illuminated, who knew all of these things ahead of time and was able to either predict them or was told or something. But he was also a guy who was, scrabbling down other people's names and trying to rat them out, and kind of reminds me of some of the people in Flat Earth who make those videos trying to, out everybody and, reveal truth. And so, yeah, it's a sad way to think of George
talking
Orwell,
of being outed and revealed, and IPS, Infinite Plane Society, has just joined the call, who's just recently done a semi-naked video to detract from these people who are making up nonsense about him. So how are you doing, IPS, first of all?
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Great topic. Yes, I'm tired of the witch hunt. And so I'm like, all right. I realized that, you watch these witch hunts, and at some point they drag her into the dungeon, they strip off her clothes, and they look for the mole that she uses to feed her familiars or whatever. They look for evidence that she's a witch, and they will find it. And so I'm like, you know what? It's at this point. I'm just going to stream in my underwear and show him my proportions. Like, I'm just so over it. The Inquisition.
Right. For people who don't know, he was being called transgender, as I have. And so when you put out that video, IPS, stripped down to your boxer shorts, I thought, oh no, that means I've got to do one too. No, I'm not going to. Nothing you can do, nothing any of us can do, can stop people who want to say certain things.
If you can just drop and rejoin, maybe you've got some sort of weird click, click, click going on while you're talking. IPS, so I don't know if you can just drop and rejoin. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, it seemed to be like cycling the noise.
Weird. Lots of technical difficulties on this show, but there we go. Hopefully it'll give some food for thought to the conspiracy theorists out there.
Yes. Ooh, they're trying to stop them from talking about 1984. Yeah.
Which seems unlikely. I mean, it's not the case here. I don't know if Martin will agree with me, but I certainly wasn't given that book at school to read. But it's certainly the case in some states of America that they're given the book to read in school, are they not?
I read it by my dad. I don't think I was given it. No, I don't think I had it in school. Mark, you're a similar age. Stephen, you're younger than me. Both Americans. Were you given 1984 to read in school? I don't think I was.
Yeah, it was my sophomore English class because my junior year was 1984.
Okay.
So that was a big, they gave out that book a lot in the 80s in the United States because why not? They kind of pushed it kind of like, well, if you don't do it now, then it's just going to be, you're going to be going backwards. So lots of schools got 1984 in the 80s.
I got Animal Farm.
I got that.
I guess it all depends on the teacher and what their views are, or who. I have no idea really. We don't have a set curriculum for all schools throughout the United States. I think it depends on the individual states, right? Or even the individual counties. I have no idea really, but maybe.
You were the most recent person to, I suppose, publicly read it would be the way to phrase it. But did you take anything new from it when you did the public reading of 1984, Patricia?
Let's see. Did I get anything new out of it? The book seemed more real to me than it did when I originally read it a long time ago, for two reasons, I guess. One of them is because I'm older and I'm able to more understand these things. And the other is because a lot of the things in that book are happening or have happened. So that's what made it seem more real. It seemed more of a fantasy that it could never happen. Like I was saying earlier, I got the book in the late 70s or early 80s. And 84 was just a few years ahead. And my mind at that time couldn't fathom how those changes could happen between that moment I was reading it and that very close future. So yeah, that's it. It just seems like it's more of, instead of fiction, it's more, it's fact, really. A lot of it's factual.
Sorry, I was on mute for a second. My apologies. Can we see if we can hear you now properly, IPS? If you can just check, see.
The stars, those things went right over my head when I read it when I was young.
Same.
Of course, all of our heads.
Yeah, sorry about the echo. Me rejoining again. We've got everyone back. It seems to be bouncing us all over the place. It's really weird. And yeah, Martin, your little chat message came up on the actual feed. Just so you know, it's not private when I'm broadcasting it. But there we go. I did get your message, so good to see.
If Stephen Chess's microphone is working.
Hello, hello.
Yes, it is. Brilliant. Oh, we can finally do a proper introduction 20 minutes into the show. How are you doing, Stephen Chess?
Good. How about you, Nathan, and everybody?
It's good to have you here. But yeah, I've completely lost track of where we were. Yeah, I mean, in terms of 1984's main influence, in terms of flat Earth influence, at least, it's got to be the bit where he's being tortured, and he's talking about having a dual system, a dual mathematical system for measuring the stars and being able to put them at close or far away. Basically, that was the key point for a flat earther, I suppose, reading the book after discovering that the Earth is flat. Would you all agree?
Yeah, man. I'm trying to find the passage now.
Another thing in the book, Martin, you mentioned doublethink. These days we have what's come out, what they call alternative facts. I mean, that's part of our, especially since Donald Trump took office, you hear that phrase bandied about a lot. It's pretty much the same thing.
Are you looking at the quote, Martin?
It actually seems to be a reoccurring theme in the book. There's a point where he's saying he doesn't know if gravity even works, or it's just like, how do they know things? It's all just sort of he works in the the Department of Truth, or the history department, so he's sort of just writing history himself, so he's kind of questioning everything.
Yeah, in 2002 in London, an institute was set up called the Information Awareness Office, dealing with newspeak, dealing with a new form of dialogue, a new form of language for us. And it's basically, when you read into the back bit, which is like a back preface to the book, it actually focuses on the whole paragraphs of these are about newspeak and how important that aspect alone is, apart from the thought police and the, you can't say anything outside of the state and the complete control of your mind. But newspeak is a biggie in this as well.
And the government buildings being pyramids, I thought was really, really interesting.
Phnom Penh today, North Korea basically dolled up their giant pyramid in the center of their capital for no reason. So that just screams to me that North Korea are part of it, which they are, because otherwise Dennis Rodman wouldn't go over there doing chest bumps with it, would they? So, yeah, pyramids.
The only one, I think, who's seen the pyramids in real life, I don't know about you, IPS. I know Mark Sargent's been. He's seen the pyramids in real life, but I don't know about anyone else here. I'd love to.
Egypt. I've coasted Egypt. I've coasted all of
ask just about anybody on the street, anybody that knows anything, at least in this country, about McDonald's, they say, who founded it? It was Ray Kroc. And it wasn't Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc had nothing to do with it. It was the McDonald's brothers. It was literally those guys. But when Ray Kroc bought them out, he did everything in his power to kill their legacy, just run it into the ground. One of the famous aspects about that story, and I read it. It wasn't. They didn't even show it in the movie. They didn't do it justice. Was the contract when he finally bought them out entirely and says, "Look, I just want to own everything." They said, "Okay, fine. We're going to keep our original store down in California." And again, the competition. Men do not like sharing power. Ray Kroc, what he did was he built a McDonald's literally right across the street and ran them into the ground until they closed. That's what he did. And there was this poignant line from the movie which really stuck with me, where you could tell that the McDonald's brothers were really, really nice guys, and Ray Kroc was just a competitive, horrible asshole that would have changed history entirely to suit his benefit if he could. And the line was when they were saying, "Look, you go too far." And he took it even a step further. He goes, "Look, if I saw my competition drowning in a lake, I would walk up to them with a garden hose and jam it down their throat." And then there's this pause, right? And he goes, Can you say you do the same?" And that was when they finally realized that they were completely different people. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about there are men out there who would do anything for the legacy. Anything, not just a legacy for your country, but a legacy for the individual. And I've got other examples, but I'll save them for later in the conversation. Anyway, sorry, that was my little rant. It's hot, and I endorse this product and or event.
Nathan and everyone, what does everyone think today's version of the 2 minutes of hate that are in 1984 are? Now, in the book, the telescreen would be on, and it would be, that moment where you're supposed to rant against Goldstein, this character.
Sports.
No, I've seen it tonight. They had the anniversary of the Battle of Passchendaele in the First World War televised on BBC all night, and they had the last post played on the trumpet, and then they have the 3 minutes of silence, and they had it all over Britain exactly the same time. So,
exactly,
yeah,
it's a skew, but the 60-second silence. So I was at my kids' gymboree. It's just like a kids group, and they had the Manchester attacks, I think it was, and suddenly we're all into a 60-second silence. A moment of deep contemplation where you think about the horrible things of this world. And yeah, you're not screaming at a telescreen, but it's the same thing.
Interesting.
Propaganda.
What about in America? What would it be? 2 minutes hate. I mean, we have the same thing when events happen, like or supposedly happen, like the anniversary of the Boston bombing or Sandy Hook, when we are asked to pause and contemplate those who we've lost. But most of the time people are sad about it, but it is sort of the same thing when we're all called to focus upon something at the same time. But I like what Stephen said, sports.
The one for America, for sure.
Well, It's kind of like in the book, it says that the 2 minute hate is sort of a vague thing. It's really not against any particular person. So in that sports, it's just sort of one group versus the other, something that occupies people's time and makes them angry,
Tribes.
Wouldn't an expanded version of that be, because you know me, I love movie references, the Purge series?
Oh, have you seen the new one? Oh,
Haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Which new one? The one from last year?
No, I got it up. Yeah, I haven't watched it. I've actually downloaded it. I was going to watch it sort of in my spare time and keep it secret.
I think because there were. I'm sorry, were there 2 or 3?
It's number 3. It is number 3. It's the final one. It's pretty apocalyptic too. It's called. I got it actually here.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I got it here. Oh shit! I'll tell you now.
Hang on, I gotta find it now.
I've got it.
I've never seen it.
The point is the concept of the movie Purge, if you hadn't heard it already, which is that one night out of the year, and I don't know if it was worldwide or if it was just the United States, you were allowed to commit crimes to purge yourself of all your hatred and get it out of your system.
Election year is called 2016.
Is it Purge election year?
Yeah, last year it was out. And I got the one too, McDonald's.
I saw it. But And it's actually an interesting concept, except it would never ever work for one very large reason, and that is the insurance companies would never endorse it in a million years, because the insurance companies would get hammered because of it. But the concept was very interesting. It's like you save up all this rage for one night, and either you hide or you fight, one of the two. And it's a fascinating look at where we could go, but yeah, never gonna happen. Sorry.
I don't know though. I really don't know. Imagine 20 years down the road with, you know, the zombieistic sort of mindset with the computer game mentality. The youths in my area, they've dislocated from any human emotions. They don't do empathy and they don't care about life. When they're wheeling up the pavement and people have to jump for their dear lives. So I can see down the road they would go for something like that if the state
you're absolutely right. You're no doubt. The youth are lost. One of the reasons this civilization has got to come to a conclusion one way or the other. But the corporations that are over them, let's put it this way, the lawyers run the world. The legal departments would never, ever, 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 just because there's so many horrible loose ends that would cost a huge amount of money. It's the money.
Part of the plot, though, isn't it? There's not, you know, you're not going to be basically going to court at the end. You're not going to be, you know, a murderer.
No, not that part. That part, you're absolutely right. You know, that part is solid. That part works. It's the property damage. Who's responsible for? It's the fires. Forget about the murder. I mean, I'm not trying to diminish this. It's like, you could kill all the people you want. I'm not saying that murder is a good thing. Murder is good. Start killing. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but the property damage, once a fire starts, who does it link back to? Eventually, there's going to be huge insurance corporations just fighting over each other. It's like, hey, that city block burned down, but these guys over here started it, and they were part of this group. It'd be awful. It'd be worse than any healthcare. It'd be like a 20-car pileup trying to sort out who exactly started it and multiply that by infinity. Anyway, go watch The Purge. You get a chance. It's an interesting movie, very, very violent, but it does. The first one really says it all. I don't think they had to make number 2 and 3, but you know, if you make a nickel in Hollywood, you're gonna get a sequel. So
what Martin was saying and what you were saying, I'm sorry, Nathan, about the youth of today are lost, and Martin was talking about that, and then I thought about Nathan's beautiful baby Eleanor, and I think about what we have for her, what kind of society we will have for her if it's like this now. But then again, my parents were saying that, as were my grandparents and probably their parents.
Well, I was going to actually say something on a very similar lines, which is to say that I couldn't remember where the line was drawn with thought police, because the kids seem to be, did they report to the thought police?
Yes. Children reported their own parents for thought crime in 1984.
Like in the film Equilibrium, when the boy reports on his father for not taking the medication that suppresses his emotions. Have you ever seen that film? It came out before Matrix. Excellent film. Equilibrium.
That's how his mate that he keeps asking for razor blades ends up in the Ministry of Love with him, because his own daughter shopped him.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I was just saying the Nazis.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying the Nazis did exactly the same. They spied on their own, and family would basically, if they weren't into the regime, would, you know, grass on their own relatives, and this was commonplace. So, you know, in these societies, this stuff.
Or the rats would eat his face while he was alive. I was trying to think of what my biggest fear would be, what my room 101 would be.
Yeah,
I don't even want to think about it. I don't have an easy answer.
No, me.
Plus, I wouldn't want to say it out loud anyway, because maybe there's a room 101 somewhere.
Exactly, where they use your worst fears against you.
My worst fears are beautiful classical music and flowers surrounding me and friends and love.
That sounds awesome. And then you go.
So if that's what someone wants to torture me with, please bring it on.
But they torture him and then release him. Sorry, you go ahead.
Well, about the movie Equilibrium that he mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah, okay.
In that movie, it was all about everyone had to be flatlined emotionally, equilibrium. And when you really get down to it, what they were doing with Sandy Hook wasn't just about gun control. It was about laying the case that negative emotions are something the state has a compelling interest in moderating, or we could have explosions like Adam Lanza. And I've heard this from many of the so-called Sandy Hook survivors, or the Sandy Hookers as I call them, going around saying, this is a psychiatric issue, unbalanced emotion. And that's what the movie was about. It was saying that our emotions as a species make us a weapon of mass destruction that needs to be regulated by big government. So it's totally 1984-ish, that movie.
Mm.
Sure.
And big pharma medicating our emotions. I mean, I've never been on any medications except occasionally. I've had to have an antibiotic like most of us. But there are people, young people, who are on all sorts of mood altering drugs. I don't mean for fun. I mean prescription drugs that they're given because their parents can't handle them, or because, you know, they're told it's because they don't have the right chemicals in their brain. But how did our society survive all of this time if there are people who don't have the right brain chemicals? Maybe there are a few, but the number of children that are on these sort of mood altering drugs, children and young adults, is legion. It's out of control crazy. And I think that, yeah, like IPS said, things like Sandy Hook are a way to get the public thinking that we do need to medicate people, young people especially, or else they'll strap themselves up with a bunch of firearms and go blow away a bunch of kids in the school. Pushing the agenda.
But far more likely they'll go and shop their parents to the police.
Well, wasn't there was another shopping incident in the movie Soylent Green, a really good movie, favorite of mine, where at one point, I haven't seen it in so long. I'm not as well versed on that as I am on 1984. The jam. One of the characters is eating cherry jam or raspberry. Yes. And the door, like eating this jam with a spoon.
Yeah, and one piece of lettuce.
Yes. And just so happy to have this treat in this horrible world. And the doors are broken down, and it's a crime to eat jam, and you get ratted out by your peers. Instead, eat Soylent Green.
Dead people.
Yeah.
I know.
I saw that in the 70s, and it really deeply affected me.
I saw Amiga Man in the cinema. It affected me more.
Really?
Yeah, it really did. I really didn't like this survivor guy played by, oh God, what was his name? But, these sort of troglodyte apocalyptic survivors.
Is that Richard Burton?
Played.
He was an
I know who it was.
Soylent Green.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking of Amiga Man, actually. Sorry. With that was Charlton Heston too, actually.
Charlton Heston, yes.
Yeah. The enemy was. But cracking film. And he had this society, he's just basically like I Am Legend, but for that day. But just about rewriting history, I've just been reading into this guy about Zabatti and Zabatti Zetti, which I've never discovered before, and I've ordered a book on it. Basically, the doctrines are basically the dialectics that are at play now. Honest to God, they're exactly like the Protocols of Zion or any other doctrine you might hear out there. Supporting this despotic system, this new world order takeover. And Fabian Society, that's their number one thing. Their symbol, the Fabian Society, who George Orwell was one of, is a sheep in wolf's clothing. A member of the Fabians is the one who was married to Katy Perry, who's a Rothschild. Russell Brand, he's a member of the Fabian Society too. He got a white dog. He's got the Fabian Society symbol, has his logo on his YouTube channel for his Trues vlog.
I used to, before all of this, love him, watch or listen to the Trues, admire his ability with the English language and his way he expressed himself and all of the things that he said. Loved it.
Me a bit because Patricia, I thought when he was doing the Trues, I thought I can do that. I really did think that. When he packed it in that one last episode, I thought you're going away. The Earth's flat.
That's what I thought too. Yeah. Yes, but no. I don't know what. No, not at all. I was thinking about zombies and thinking about IPS because of some zombie art that you used to do, and how we were talking about these Omega Man and all these other movies, which, you know, don't really all specifically have zombies in them, but they do have things like a plague or a threat or something that's taking over the physical or the mental. Drugs can create a zombification in young people. So kind of tying all that together and thinking about the sort of zombie aspect that is big in our culture right now. How many zombie movies have there been? And they started quite a long time ago. I think it was Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Living Dead. And continuing forward, not that I think that there's anything inherently evil about zombie movies or zombie art at all. My brother owns a sort of goth rock music store in New Orleans in the French Quarter, and he's got lots of clothes he sells with skulls on them, and he's into metal music. And New Orleans itself has that sort of dark subculture going on, but they're a bunch of really nice people that are involved in that, just regular people, just like, you know, IPS painting, that sort of stuff. It's just a form of expression. And then, of course, there's a Mexican Day of the Dead, which sort of spawned that skull painting style that a lot of people are familiar with. But what is it with the zombies? And that it's part of our culture now. I wonder if it's getting us set up for the zombification that's happening with people with their telescreen / cell phones in their hands, and the drugs that we're being told are good to take, even on TV commercials.
There have been a bunch of parodies lately, and you can watch. I mean, on YouTube, you could take a pick. There's a bunch of them out there where they're comparing pretty much anyone. No offense to those out here, anyone under the age of 25 with their, you know, that are basically the phones are surgically attached to their arms with zombies. There's been a bunch of little parodies. It's so obvious. People walking the streets now. I mean, huge amounts of, mostly in campuses. I noticed it before I left Colorado, because the University of Colorado Boulder was right there in the heart of Boulder as a college town. And I remember as the iPhones came out and, you know, they swept through the campuses really quick, how the students changed very, very quickly. I would be driving by the same bus stop, and normally be kids hanging out, hitting each other, playing slap and tickle. And slowly but surely, over a span of a couple of years, they just all look down. And nobody looks up anymore. I mean, honest to God, a UFO could fly right over their heads. They'd never see it unless somebody had already posted it online. And then they'd look down, and then they'd look up.
Right.
They check their phones.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mark. IPS did some very, very relevant artwork on a sort of Halloween thing for Android, which is so pertinent.
Oh yes, that's right. In when Android came out with, I think it was called Gingerbread, Google purchased. Well, I sold a painting to them. I licensed it to them. It was basically a lot of people on cell phones that were zombies, and it ended up as an Easter egg in their phone. But yeah, for years I painted zombies, and for me, it's always been a metaphor for collectivism, groupthink, which is a 1984 term, the mob mentality, which is roused by, you know, demagoguery. Like earlier, Patricia was saying, do we have anything similar to like the 2 minutes of hate? And I think we do, but I think it's 2 minutes of canned laughter. I think we get our 2 minutes of hate with the late night talk shows, where they show you, this is who you laugh at, this is who you despise, this is who you like. And then the mob, the crowd, they just go along with it. They just, like, essentially, they think as a group and they react according to what's shown on the screen. And it reminds me of 1984, except instead of 2 minutes of hate, it's 2 minutes of laughter. But it's pretty much the same thing, the spirit of it.
Interesting. I'd never thought of laughter or hysteria as being a hate-filled thing, but I suppose you're right, because of what they're being told contextually. If you're told, if we pick a flat earther, if we've got which basketballer do you want to pick? You know, if you're told to hate the current person that's saying, hey, the earth could be flat, then the masses will just listen and laugh along with the jokes that are told about that particular individual.
Very true. Even I see videos on YouTube that are exposing somebody, and they'll do something like showing things they said on their own channel, things they did, things they have on their own Facebook, things they're be perfectly willing to show anybody publicly that they're involved with, but they'll play scary music under it and do a lot of flashing graphics and convince you to hate with visuals. with visual things. So yeah, our 2 minutes of hate, I think, has been spread out over a large period of time. And also, what about all the video games where there's lots of killing and shooting? Could that be something like that too? I don't know, Mark. I'll ask you, Mark.
From a video game standpoint, yes, I can speak on this topic.
Does it teach us to hate?
Well, police groups, you've even amazed how much law enforcement can make mainstream media knuckle under. Perfect example, not to digress too far on a certain path. We all remember 1984. Here's a good little tie-in. 1984 was also the year that the very first Terminator movie came out with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And what was the big scene in that movie? Are we off?
The police officer. No, we're still on.
Okay. Where Arnold goes into the police station and just annihilates the entire police station. Law groups really took offense to that, because it showed like, look, just go to a police station. You want to go out in a blaze of glory, go after them. So much so that when he released the second movie, the second Terminator in early 1990 or 1992, it was completely off the table. All he did was wound police. He didn't kill any of them. Terminators didn't kill any of them, to where even showed in the graphic number of fatalities, 0.0. All he did was property damage. That's how much he knuckled under. Forward that to now. It's 2017. Look up when the first Grand Theft Auto game came out.
Where you're allowed to, pick up hookers. Okay.
Oh, not just pick up hookers, but pick them up, beat them, throw them back on the sidewalk, take a shotgun to them, and you're getting points. You're getting good stuff for this. That game, and I had friends that were calling me up going, dude, you get the latest GTA? I'm going, no, man, I can't. I cannot. You know me. I try to be a good guy whenever I can. I go, look, I have a hero complex. There's no way I can endorse a game that allows just random, wanton, unabashed killing of people. I mean, stuff that you would get the chair for in any state that allowed the chair. And this is something they're marketing to kids. This is a game that you couldn't even get away with 20 years ago, and now you can. And does it promote? Do we see a lot more killings in the street? No, because kids are addicted to their phones. They're too lazy to go out and actually get guns and go killing. Well, no, it's true. The whole Columbine thing, and I do believe Columbine was a real thing. Columbine was when's the last time we saw a Columbine thing? Not for a while. Sandy Hook? Nah, not buying it. Not for a second. Anyway, so yes, it does desensitize people.
I don't know. Like you said, it kind of desensitized people to the concept of killing, but you're not going to go out and kill people like you kill people in GTA or Call of Duty. When you're playing competitively, it's more like a sport. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right. Let me add one more caveat to that. You're absolutely right. It doesn't encourage you, but God help us if we ever ran into, I'm not kidding you. I mean, there's been several little recent movies that have touched on this. If we ever run into a martial law situation, anybody under the age of 25, I am giving huge distance to. I am not, it's like, hey, buddy, you know, with other people, you'd be like, so what's going, you relate to it. But there's going to be a layer of kids that
Island.
Well, there's that, because I would tell them, I wrote this in the manual. I said, because if you start cutting your dosage as fast as you can and drag it out as long as you can, because a lot of the prescription drugs we're giving people now are more powerful than street drugs. There was oh crap. There was a girl that I knew.
You got Prozac, lithium, Ritalin. You've got.
There we go. Yeah.
Prozac, or is it Xanax? I think it was Xanax she was on, which is super powerful. So she was on Xanax, and I was reading up on the takedown from Xanax. A lot of people don't know that when you're on some of these, you can't go cold turkey. You cannot go turkey. Like
shock.
The what?
Your body can go into shock.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can have a psychotic break. When you go off Xanax, you have to tell your doctor, and it takes somewhere from 9 months to a year, and they switch you to morphine on the way down. I'm going, holy crap. What? And so look at what happens if you try to go cold turkey. You don't. You freaking lose it. So yeah, we put ourselves, this is the end of my little rant. We put ourselves in a very precarious position in case something bad happens on multiple levels. Because the kid's on prescription drugs or even stealing prescription drugs.
Big rule number 1 in your pamphlet: don't tell anyone you're a prepper. So the bigger boys.
Well, that's true.
No, I mean that.
Yeah. Well, you have to tell people because you're trying to help people.
I'm trying to help people. I can't just say do this. Like, look, from experience. At the same time, no. What you don't want to tell them. This is me trying to be funny. What you don't tell them is that you're a Mormon. That's what you don't want to tell them. Because Mormons automatically are preppers. I mean, way more than even the average prepper. They've got a huge stockpile. Literally, Utah will be the last place to go.
So the key is be a prepper, but tell everybody you're a Jehovah's Witness.
There you go.
And nobody will come around.
No, you don't tell them you tell them you're Catholic. Tell them you're Episcopalian. I don't care. Don't tell them you're Jehovah's Witness.
Well, if you don't, people want to stay away from Jehovah's Witness because
you do. But
that's what I meant.
They got a house full of food. Anyway, sorry, we're off on the whole zombie thing. This is your fault.
Not true. I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. They'd rely on the organization to save them if something happens.
Oh, okay, good. And I'm not trying to insult any Jehovah's Witness people because I know, Stephen, you're a former Jehovah's Witness and a couple other people in Flat Earth.
It's a cult.
Wait, Stephen, but did you grow up, and I'm not putting you on the spot here, but did you grow up in a staunch Mormon family?
Jehovah's Witness. There's a difference.
Are they that different?
There's a big difference.
So Jehovah's Witnesses don't prep.
I don't think, do Mormons prep along?
Are you storing food right now? Should we write down your address right now?
They don't live with me, so I don't think they're prepping. But I did when I was being a little bit more paranoid about the system falling down and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I used to have a whole lot more prepping stuff prior to September 23rd, 2015. And then when that event or non-event occurred, I ended up moving anyway, but out of the country. Remember that, Mark? September 23rd, 2015. That was, I think it was 2015 or 2016 when all the stuff about martial law was, I remember you and I talked about it a lot.
I didn't think it was that serious though.
It was like all over the internet. I don't think anybody in the real world was talking about it, but it was one of those things.
Jade Helm and all that.
Jade Helm, exactly.
Oh yeah, but no, by then I was so heavy into Flat Earth that I didn't even.
Right.
I honestly, it was like, whatever.
It's good to be prepared, not for a zombie apocalypse, but for flood, fire, power outages.
Yeah, the whole reason I wrote the prepper guide literally was because of Katrina.
Right.
Because the whole Katrina thing happened. And I wasn't even there. I was in Colorado, but Katrina pissed me off because the whole city had to leave and the people that came back didn't prep. It's like, you were put through hell, man. Why didn't you just put some water over there, some batteries, a couple flashlights, something? Nope.
I have absolutely everything. I mean, alternative power. I mean, if all the power went down, I could run my entire house using a leisure battery and a series of solar panels. I got all alternative farmer. Nice. I got everything I would need if I needed to get out of Dodge when I believed that thermonuclear weapons were real. I basically
home. Our home has been built for us, and we are here to live, and so will many generations forward. So it's actually a very safe feeling. Those doomsday prophecies don't do anything to me anymore. I feel like in some way, flat Earth and this whole truth seeking has made us less paranoid than people think, and more feeling somewhat bulletproof.
Yeah. Do you know I'm after 9/11, Patricia? Do you know what the #1 hit was on the internet? What Nostradamus said of this happening. And I think especially specifically with Nostradamus, he actually says of a zombie Armageddon in it is actually a quatrain which states, during the big games in London, which some interpreted as being the Olympic Games in London, the dead will rise up. Now, a lot of people take the works of Nostradamus seriously, because of what happened with him in the Catholic Church. He was outside of the control. So it's funny that, people will jump straight to prophecy if something happens. This is the mindset of the population. They're still dealing with the ethereal. They're still dealing with the supernatural. They still want answers from it too. 9/11 was an ideal, example of that for sure. The day after, #1 hit.
Maybe I could point a question to IPS, which is to say that you've often got a lot to say about doomsaying and doomsayers. Is 1984 a book that's basically a bit of a doomsaying predictive programming book? Or I don't know how to phrase the question best, but is 1984 an example of just doomsaying?
I think with 1984, what we're seeing actually is an example of what Orwell maintained about time and history, when he says those who control the past control the future, those who control the present control the past. I think that these doomsday scenarios are always authored by the powers that be, because if they can control the future, they can steer us. And so they tell us, if we don't change our carbon footprints, the world's going to be flooded. If we don't take these specific measures, this could happen. So they sell us doomsdays to control our present. And so 1984, I don't know if it's so much as a blueprint of what could happen, but it's an illustration of how totalitarian works in all its aspects. And a huge part of it is control of the past, present, and future, and the narratives, which they do today with the media.
So what you're saying is, I was just going to say, it's a demonstration of how it's done. Therefore, the fact that it's kind of come true isn't because it's predictively showing what's going to happen, but more it's inevitable because it's demonstrating the systems and structures. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think you could make the case that Brave New World could be a possible, doomsday scenario or something that could happen. But with 1984, I think it was more of an apt description of what was already going on in the present.
Right. So it's back to it being sort of cyclical. It's showing history repeating. If those systems are already in place, then inevitably you're going to see the same things happen over and over again.
Yes, precisely. Absolutely. And it's like in a way, it's a warning. It's like if your media controls the past, like I often say that the media's standard operating procedure today is the Mandela effect. And to the extent that we're not watchful, they will totally rewrite even what happened the day before. And so 1984 was all about media mind control.
Sure, he had the memory hole, didn't he? I'm sure at one stage he had a piece of information which absolutely contradicted the current narrative, and he was in turmoil over whether or not to keep this piece of paper. And he sort of shuffled it under a whole load of other pieces of paper before realising the disaster that would befall him should he keep that piece of paper. So it just went straight in the memory hole with everything else. In other words, the system's so ingrained in him that he's self-policing. He doesn't need a guy standing over him. And I think the same is true today when people point the finger at certain people in the media and say they know about whatever, Sandy Hook, 9/11, flat earth, doesn't matter. The assumption is that there's a guy standing over them that's told them the secret, and then there's a conspiracy. Whereas in reality, it's more like the character in the story, which is the self-policing takes place. And that ties in well with people's cognitive dissonance. In other words, they're going to be in a position where they can't necessarily quantify what they're seeing, and they know that they should be self-policing the information anyway. So we see this a lot in Flat Earth with people, holding views that are absolutely contradictory to the reality of their circumstance, but that's what they've been told, so therefore it's accurate, and therefore they will self-police and say, no, I must hold this viewpoint, it's what the accepted narrative is, therefore it's correct. Whether I choose to believe it or not, I'm not going to question it. So that sort of element of self-policing is abundant in the system that we find ourselves in, and that was very much evident when it came to the memory hole.
So much of our history's gone down the memory hole. Even when a movie comes out and it's actually a remake of a movie, most of the younger people don't even know it's a remake. You hear someone talking about something and they think it's the original, or they don't even think about original or remake or anything. A lot of the good things, not just a piece of paper that says who really shot Kennedy going down the memory hole. It's a lot of beautiful, wonderful things have gone down the memory hole. And just been replaced by whatever it is that they want us to believe now. I mean, think about global warming and global cooling, and then what we know about both of those things being completely bonkers. So
at the same time, though, some things can't be changed. It's rare, but I have seen it happen. For example, the Jim Jones massacre from the late 70s, where, if you guys know French Guiana, Jim Jones, it's where the whole saying comes, you guys have probably heard it, drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah, drinking the Kool-Aid. Once that saying, because it's catchy. But it unfortunately, but even now, no one's ever going to change. From now until the end of our civilization, it's always going to be drinking the Kool-Aid. It's never going to be drinking the Flavor Aid. But again, the point is that sometimes you can't change it. It's so ingrained that you cannot go back. And that one was organic more than anything. Once the story got out, everyone remembers it's tied. Jim Jones, Kool-Aid. Jim Jones, Kool-Aid.
It's within Flat Earth, we hear it a lot. I know that I've been told that you and I, Mark, are broadcasting from the same room. I've heard this and sometimes it's same house. Sometimes it's and David Weiss.
You want to do the trick?
People believe this.
Watch, here we go.
Oh,
here's the Illuminati cards. You ready?
Okay, you can hand them over to me.
Okay, here we go.
I got it.
See? There we go.
We are in the same room.
That's how we do it in the same room.
But people have said that, and it's a revisionist history of the reality, because somebody decided in that case that they wanted to spin some sort of conspiracy about us. And people who hear someone else talking about it will then just believe it and take it on board and run with it. They never even saw anything that would lead them to believe that. They just have heard it. And I know it happens to pretty much everybody on this panel.
Well, talking of seeing things,
everyone's had a conspiracy created by them, which has then sort of become in the canon of Flat Earth fact. Can't do anything to change it.
Well, you've reminded me of something I wanted to bring up specifically about 1984, which is the one element that I think, how did they get that aspect into that book? They must have known, which is the idea of having a camera attached to a screen. I'll hold up my iPad at this point and go, that is a 1984 idea, admittedly attached to the wall, but it's the same thing. And there's been not so recent now actually, but controversy regarding the open admission that Windows is actually watching you and listening to you in Windows 10, and arguably they've been doing it since Windows 7, just people weren't aware of it. They were absolutely doing the same thing. But now we're in a position where we know that they are literally watching us, and we have to tick a permission box to let them. But people kind of pass that off. It's almost like they don't care. I mean, I'm sure Mark was aware as well from probably Windows 7 that was very much the case. And if you're conscious of it, you can protect yourself in various different ways, he says, while his stream keeps dropping. But, it's one of those that most people are aware that they are being watched by every camera on every device they have at an unconscious level. And they're not really that fussed about it. If it was the case that, I like to use this example, but to catch a predator, it was in the days, I think it was the late 90s, where people were under the impression that you didn't have any instant messages stored. They were gone in an instant as soon as you press the X. And of course, there's a load of perverts that get hauled up in court because they're storing the instant messages that are incriminating. Now, that's back in the 90s. These days, you've literally got a camera in your room. And you hear horror stories of people having their smart TVs hacked into and literally people being able to view what is on their very poorly protected computers via these smart TVs. So, like I say, people are very much aware of the camera, but unless it's got the light on, like it has for every single one of us now, most people won't even give it a second thought that that camera could be actually looking at them, or the microphone could be recording their blazing row or their incriminating activities. Most people don't give it a thought.
You're absolutely right. It is denial, and unless the light's on, and I've noticed it sometimes. There are certain apps that, for whatever reason, I'm not doing anything on the camera, and that light comes on. I immediately look at it. It's like, okay, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. If the light isn't on, why would you think about it? Why, until it what's the old saying? Until it happens, it hasn't happened, and then it becomes a lot more serious. Yeah, people knew for a second. There's all sorts of fun movies that touch on it, but yeah, it's mostly denial. That end, well, they wouldn't really record everything, would they? It's like, well, I mean, everything that once hard drives got so cheap and so large, we recorded. I mean, it'd be dumb not to. If you think I'm kidding, go to Skype sometime and pull up somebody that you've known for a long time and just start scrolling up in your conversation. That conversation is stored pretty much forever.
And people have been caught with texts that way, especially certain politicians with texts to prostitutes when they were married in office. And those texts, although I guess that were deleted, were later somehow fished out of some storage system and then used to prove that they were indeed doing those things. Something else has been happening as of today's date, July 31st, 2017, is the rumor about Mark Zuckerberg shutting down all Facebook groups. I guess Facebook came to my mind because 1984, data collection and spying on the people. And this is a rumor. Well, Mark has alerted me to that, but I'm getting lots of messages about people saying, Facebook's owner is shutting down all flat Earth. And well, that's not true.
Yeah. It was a great rumor, and of course, it was a hoax. It was a horribly written article, but the headline wasn't written horribly. So, and a lot of people don't even make it to the first paragraph.
That's right.
They make it to the headline. So it's getting traction now. Flat Earth is getting traction that the powers that be were thinking about shutting it down. Yeah, because if it was shut down. It's kind of like the NPR story about Kyrie Irving recently, where a teacher, and I can't remember what state it was in, was getting pushback in his science class. And the reason was so that he was trying to teach science, and the kids were going, no. Kyrie Irving said it was flat. So who are you? He's a sports superstar. He makes millions of dollars. He's successful and popular and all this. Who are you? And the teacher freaks out and writes a thing about it. NPR picks up on it. Next thing you know, it's in Rolling Stone and the Washington Post and ESPN and all these other things. So and was that done to gauge the public's reaction? Yeah, probably. Because it started out as NPR, but I don't know if it was that great a story. It was very, very small. It wasn't very, very in depth, but the media did latch onto it. And yeah, it was some sensationalism in it. But
there's always stories coming out about don't accept this person on Facebook because if you do, they're going to be able to spy on you. Well, can anybody spy on you anyway if they're your Facebook friend? I mean, even I have most everything set to public on my Facebook because I'm using it as a way to do flat Earth. It's not a secret by any means, but Mark's not even on Facebook. So does that make Mark more secure from any sort of 1984 observation? I don't think so, because you're a public figure.
and the agency told me I couldn't have a Facebook anymore.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. The when I went into here real quick. So when the thing here's a quick little story from this morning, for example. Past 24 hours. Again, San Diego newspaper, sort of like the Houston Chronicle, San Diego Union Tribune, and the story was about one of their own San Diego people, San Diegoites, whatever. NASA astronaut shares spectacular video of San Diego from. Oh, they changed the headline. They changed the. Oh, talk about revisionist history. They changed the headline from this morning. Holy smokes!
Really?
The headline used to read, "Proves the Earth is round." They put that at the end of the NASA astronaut shares spectacular video of San Diego from space, proving the Earth is round. That was the headline, and they cut the last part off.
How does it read
That's
now?
gross.
How does it read in full now?
It reads now just that shares spectacular video of San Diego from space. That's it. That's the whole title. And I remember reading it this morning going, oh, getting a little dig in there, because why would you care about proving the Earth is round? And that's because we've been raising so much hell,
right?
That they have to respond in kind. But somebody got to them, and so they sort of like, remember, well, the NPR thing. Remember I told you, Patricia, the NPR article which came out about the teacher, I was like one of the first people in there, and I had to create a login and a password. The passwords, where it's like, oh, weak and strong. They wouldn't even give me a freaking password confirm option unless it got in a medium or strong. And I'm typing characters I've never used before in my life. A lot of them. I don't even remember what the password was. Anyway, the point was I was the first person in there, and I made a quick little comment saying, pro flat earth. But it was that thing I sent to you where I said, look, science, because I was appealing to science, go, look, you're not going to have a chance in this fight unless you come up with a simpler way to battle us. You try to go to the person in the street with geometry or trig or calculus, you are going to lose because they don't know it. You might as well be firing your guns straight up in the air. You're going nowhere with this. Anyway, the point is I made the comment, and then less than 2 hours later, the second the Washington Post picked it up, as soon as their comments started filling up, they killed the comment section. It's gone. Comment section is no longer there.
Interesting. You mentioned the Houston Chronicle, and the writer from the Houston Chronicle came to my house, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and spoke with me about flat earth and my feelings on it, and et cetera, et cetera. And it was for an upcoming newspaper article. And then the writer said she'd get back to me and that she would like to come take some photos of myself doing a show. And I said, well, why don't you come on Wednesday when I'm doing a show with Mark Sargent, and you could take some pictures. And then, that time elapsed where they didn't contact me. And I thought, oh, maybe they're dropping the story.
Right.
But they just contact me, and they're coming on Wednesday to take a photo.
It takes, apparently when you do mainstream stuff, it takes longer because you have to go through layers of producers. You got to go up and then it comes back down.
Yeah, but I'm worried about what happens to what comes out of my mouth.
Facts be damned. But there are ways to get around it as long as we're savvy enough not to give them anything to use against us. Like Nathan Oakley handled the discussion with Vice pretty well, because they said, is this the Illuminati? And he's like, I don't know about that, but my starting point is the Earth is flat. So you have to be able to, that was handled very well. And then when Critical Thinking Always and ODD were talking to KUSA Denver 9, that was live streamed. And I mean, sure, they accidentally blocked out the first of the 15 minutes of it, but that was live streamed. And so I think they were able to get more out that would not have made the final cut, like when they called out NASA for lying and using CGI. So the live, you have a little more control over what you say, but really it comes down to recognizing that the media is going to enforce its narrative, and our job is to get the message out without giving them anything to use against us. It's tricky, but
it is tricky. The woman was asking me questions like, so what do you think about Bigfoot? So what do you think about? So she was trying to get me to say that I believe in lots of other things to paint me as a conspiracy freak. And of course, I pretty much said to all of them, I don't know about that one. I don't say that it's factual or not factual. You know, I focus on flat Earth.
And you're absolutely right. I got the same thing from the CNN guy, which he was asking me all sorts of questions. He asked me about, he didn't ask me about Boston, but he asked me about 9/11, Sandy Hook, and a couple others, which were kind of, but I eventually lumped them all into one. I go, look, for me, flat Earth's at the very top, and all these others you're bringing up, I don't spend any time on them. But yeah, you're right. He was trying to paint me into sort of a corner, but at the same time, I agreed. I said, look, yeah, very possible, you know, because I had answers. Just about everything is a conspiracy,
right?
If you look at it hard enough. And he goes, well, you know, is there anything that isn't a conspiracy that you don't believe in? And I go, well, you know, the standards, you know, Elvis and Bigfoot, and no, Elvis is not alive, and Bigfoot, nobody cares about.
There might be Bigfoot. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think there's something out there, but I don't think it's
right. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
I think it's a whole nother deal.
It's pretty true that once you get this deep into flat Earth, you think that there's a possibility that everything is a lie. So
yeah, again, I cannot judge. You've heard me say this. I can't judge anymore. I don't care. So when people say I've got something to tell you, I cannot look at them honestly in my heart and say this guy's a complete idiot psychopath. No, I say tell me what you got.
I've heard honest people in podcasts trying to tell us how they've, you know, have Bigfoot sightings and that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, oh man, you know, I don't say, oh, you guys are crazy, you know, I'm not gonna. I was listening to him for a while, and I was like, okay, that's kind of an interesting thing to be into, but why, you know? Let
me tell you a quick Bigfoot story, just to digress for a second. The reason why I don't spend that much time on it, well, one, because they've never found a body ever. You'd think that a hunter would stumble across something once. You know, we've all heard the stories. They smell horrible and all that. And I know on the flip side, people say, well, yeah, but they found the billy ape finally just a couple of years ago in South America. It's a chimp that's actually 6 feet tall, but it's super smart and it stays away from people to no end. So who knows? Maybe they die in the trees. But there was this interesting story. The reason why I don't spend that much time on it is this interesting story about a rancher who was, you know, near this forest area, his property. He was on horseback, saw one, literally couldn't have been more than 20, 30 yards, said he had him point blank with a rifle, point blank, you know, right there. You know, rancher was not drunk, says he fired and the thing just vanished. At that point, I'm going, okay, maybe we're talking about something that's completely out of our league here. It's like, okay, at that point, I just stopped. I didn't read any more Bigfoot stories because, like, okay.
Well, the thought that somebody killed. They're not real glasses.
He's a good actor. He's a good actor. So he's acting. The CGI.
Yeah. Okay, so they're real glasses.
There are no lenses. There are no lenses.
There are no lenses.
There are no lenses.
Oh my gosh. The conspiracy is true.
The question is, who was the first one to notice?
I never noticed this entire time. Have they always had no glass in them?
They have always not had any glass in them.
You know what I thought was funny about it was when I first saw you have glasses, I said, they look nice. But I thought, how does he get no glare? Because every one of my glasses, it's a lot of glare that comes off from when I wear them. And that's why I wear contact lenses sometimes.
No, I'm glad. I kudos to whoever finally said something, because I've been doing this for a while now. I wore these glasses more or less as a prop. And I did them. It was my own little method, which was Bill Nye looks smarter because he does a bow tie and a jacket.
Right. You don't want to do a jacket or a bow tie. So
I don't want to do a jacket or a bow tie. So I am out Bill Nye. Question is, do I look smarter because of these glasses? Do I look more credible because
Lensgate?
Lensgate. There you go.
Does it make you look smarter? I don't know. I think it looks good. If you ever have to wear glasses, put lenses in those.
Well, thank you. But You know what I'm getting at. The point, and no, you guys can tie this to when I was doing my rants on Bill Nye, which was Bill Nye drove me nuts because he just kept getting pulled onto television because he looked like a credible nerd. That was it. So like, all right, see what I can do.
So what do you think is going to happen? Because it's been revealed that you're going to be, some video will be made. Mark Sargent wears fake rims. No,
I don't know if that's much of a story.
Yeah. That he showed himself.
No attention-grabbing headlines in that one, I'm afraid.
What?
No headline grabbing, with that particular one.
I mean, no, what's funny was, if you believe in synchronicity, that the movie, I know you guys are going to cringe when I say this, the remake of Ghostbusters, when, what's his face, who plays Thor, he was their office assistant. He actually wore frames. Well, I was watching the movie just a couple weeks ago. He was wearing frames without glasses, and he did this. He was like wiping his eyes like this. I think at first was they made the commercials for the G.I. Joe toys interlaced with their show, and then they ran back-to-back hours of the show. And what they figured out was kids that were under the age of 13 didn't know when the commercial ended and the show began, and vice versa. And so they were engaged, and what they were doing was just basic CIA programming, which was, if the target's engaged, not just casually watching, if they're literally watching the show, you're giving them a 2-hour commercial. And they knew this. It was causing real problems because the parents would go to the stores and the parents be like, kids were like, can I put this in the basket? No. Can I put this in the basket? No. And then, can I put this G.I. Joe thing in the basket? No. And then the kids would go, no, I'm putting the freaking G.I. Joe thing in the basket. You can go to hell. And the parents were losing it. Their kids were going insane. And so, and parents talk, it's like, wait, what toy was it? And so eventually Congress had to step in, and they had to pass a law. And again, this shows your revisionist history. I remember when the law was passed, it was part of it was like the G.I. Joe clause, or the G.I. Joe Act, because it was all based off of what Hasbro did. Well, the lawyers got involved eventually, and have almost, you can look at it now, and it's barely mentioned. They have scrubbed the internet. It is gone from the internet. All the mentions of G.I. Joe, every YouTube video, every little article about it, and this was in the early 90s. All the archives are gone. It is now just a little byline in part of the Children's Media Act of, I think it was 1993 when they finally revised it.
Well, this is something that, sorry to interrupt, this is something that IPS mentioned earlier, and this is where I've found my karma with the Mandela effect. And this is precisely thanks to IPS saying, well, it's standard practice, them changing things, them altering things, them pulling things out, as opposed to the kind of conspiracy spin that people put on the Mandela effect. But while I've actually got the camera, because I've been booted from this call about 30 times, I've been a terrible host. I can only apologise to everyone listening and to all you guys who've kept it going while I've not been here. But to bring it back onto 1984, I've not seen the movie, and it doesn't get a great write-up from many people I speak to about it. But Mark, you're probably the movie buff on the panel. How does it compare? Does it have more lessons? Does it leave anything out that the book probably has? What's the score with the movie?
Well, the movies can never be as in depth, because the studios have to cap it at what is 2 hours and change. If you're James Cameron, you can run for 3 hours nowadays because you're James Cameron. But you're always going to leave out some of the little nuances of it. I'm trying to think there was anything though that was of note. I mean, all the good quotes were there. Oceania has always been at war with Eurasia. Luckily, with a movie like that, again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So as long as it was direct, it was a good.
Or is still strong, and he does not love Big Brother. So it kind of is a happy ending in some sort of way. I definitely prefer the book ending. It's more of a lesson.
Have anybody here seen Clockwork Orange at all?
Sorry, just before you come on to Clockwork Orange, I missed that because I wasn't part of the call. So
very similar, that he could not be cured. Basically, won in the end because he wasn't basically brainwashed or biddied.
So did you just say that they completely changed the ending? Because that's a pretty big answer to my question that I missed.
Yeah, pretty much. They changed the ending. So in the book, Winston is a broken man and loves Big Brother, unless he's faking it. But the way you read the book, he's not faking it. But in the movie, he is a broken man, but he secretly, deep inside, does not love Big Brother.
Yep.
So they changed it. I mean, that's like a pretty important part of that's what the whole thing is about. The spirit of man has triumphed.
The brainwashing succeeds in the book. Basically, he's kept under control, and he becomes. What do they call them? Proles? Is it the normal people, the people in the bar?
Yeah. The proles have the best life. They're like the woman hanging up the washing that we spoke of earlier. They're big and hardy and strong and have families, and they have love, and they have fights and passion and sex and appreciate nature and live closer to the earth. In a way, they have the best life. And
they always reminded me of the Irish. I don't know why. Whenever I read, the Irish always came to mind.
Irish washerwoman hanging out the laundry with big red arms and strong, like it says in the book.
Awesome. I mean, while I've again got actually an opportunity to thank you all, I'm going to do it before I get kicked out, and I'm going to end the show. So hopefully we've at least got an ending without it getting snaps. So I'm going to do this pretty quickly. So IPS, first and foremost, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's an excellent topic. I read 1984 like 3 months before I found out the world is flat, so it's fresh in my mind. And there is that scene in there where he talks about how subjective our interpretation of reality actually is when he's breaking him down during the torture scene, where he's like, we could have you with local stars if we wanted to. And I think that's the message of the book. It's about if they can control your mind, they can control your reality. So, hey, great topic, totally relevant. Thanks everyone else for your comments and everything. Very interesting.
Cool. And Mark Sargent, thank you very much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. And I was never wearing glasses. Mark never wore glasses. There you go.
And Martin Liedtke, thank you very much for being on Flat Earth United. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Nathan. My pleasure. Well, lovely topic. Absolutely love this topic. And I've read it 4 times, twice as a flat earther, and listened to it once. I do think it's really relevant as a framework for what's happening now. I think it's gone beyond that book. If I go to the shops, I'm on camera 10 times just to go to the shops. They're on lampposts. I got facial recognition on my traffic light.
p.m. GMT, 6 p.m. Eastern. Bro Sanchez. So
Look forward to it.
be cool.
Cool. And I'm back. I will get it in. So thank you very much, Patricia, for keeping it hanging in there while I was gone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. God bless all.
Goodbye, live chat.
Goodbye, live
enjoyed
chat. And I
it.
will say one last big, massive thank you and goodbye to Stephen Chess. So thank you very much, Stephen, for being here. It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. It's good talking.
And last of all, to all of you who have stuck with us through the terrible OBS feed, hopefully you will watch on the actual Google Plus feed, as it seems to have been a lot better. It had a lot more of an audience as well, 100 plus people watching. So in the meantime, make sure to like, share and subscribe. I've been Nathan Oakley. I will see you all in the next video.